How's it going, you guys? I just wanted to go over today a couple of things, comparing the 2008-2009 housing industry to where we are today. So an important distinction to make, just to start off with, is a recession and housing prices, or a housing recession, are not the same thing. The reason that people have that connected in their mind so much is because the recession in 2008-2009 was largely in part caused by the fact that they were overbuilding, had bad lending practices, and that there was a housing recession attached to the normal economic recession. Now, that isn't always the case. And even within that, there's details that are important to note. Over the past 4 or 5 recessions, housing prices have actually gone up. So there's a difference. And even during the 2008-2009 recession, there were a lot of markets where housing prices still went up. On average, over the US, there was a decrease of about 18 to 20%, in the single family market, but that's not every single market. Things move, differently depending on where you're at. For example, in the Bay Area, Miami, LA, New York, Washington, Houston, Austin, where a lot of tech companies are moving nowadays, you're going to have a more cyclical market. So when the economy is going well, you're going to see the housing prices increase very quickly. When the housing market's going bad, you're going to see them decrease very quickly. And fortunately, right as we started to overbuild, or not even overbuild, we're short 5.4 million properties, but right as the housing construction started to shoot up and we started to try to catch up with our inventory a year or two ago, pre-COVID, that's essentially when COVID happened, and it sort of messed everything up and shut all of that down. So right as we were about to start going into that overbuilding phase, which maybe would have led us into a recession that would be more connected with the housing market, it got shut down. So we're already short on properties pre-COVID. COVID happens, supply chain issues ensue. We start increasing the tariffs on Canada, and now the inventory and the housing starts goes down even further than it should. At the same time as all of the millennials, Gen X, Gen Z are turning 20 to 30 and wanting to purchase all of those homes. And COVID is now, because the inventory level is low, and interest rates are dropping drastically, that pushes a bunch of buyers into the market and shoots the equity of these people that have owned their homes for a long time way up. So 2008, 2009, massive inventory, low equity in the houses. Nowadays, high equity in the houses. 43% of the homeowners are, millennial or Gen X, Gen Z. About 50% of the housing market is made up of that. And so half the people that are owning the homes now are people that are young. They're able to work more if they need to in order to pay for the house. We have, record low unemployment rates. So pretty much everybody has a job if they want one, and even remote for some people. And the conditions for this recession are just very different from that 2008-2009 situation. So as the sentiment in the real estate market goes down, right now we have a crashing graph, if you were to look at it, of the amount of people that are interested in buying a home. But there are still so many people in that group, even on that downward trajectory, that are thinking, oh, maybe now's my chance to get a deal, that we're still seeing on Zillow, even in the Bay Area, where it should be the worst. In a cyclical market, the economy's going well, it's the highest, and it's the lowest in, a bad economy. We're still seeing 50, 60, 100, 200 people on some properties save that property, which typically equates to 2 or 3 offers on the property. So, let's assume that things get even worse, and the amount of people that want to buy a home goes down another 20, 30%. There's still 1 or 2 offers on a lot of these properties, and that's just in the Bay Area. You're going to have to take a look at your specific market, and that's going to, kind of build up your knowledge over time too, is taking a look at Zillow every month and clicking on properties, see how many people save it, and having, talking to the realtors in the area and seeing kind of the market sentiment and stuff like that. But because every market's going to be different as we go into this recession, but across the board, we're short 5.4 million homes in the US. The interest rates are high and people still are trying to buy. So if the Federal Reserve, there's 2 ways it could go. If the Federal Reserve sees that, hey, we lowered inflation, they're going to say, great, we're going into a recession and things happen a couple months out. So we're going to want to start lowering rates to use real estate to pull us out of this. We're going to lower our tariffs on Canada so that we can get some more lumber here, lower the cost of building for the new construction, developers. And, that's going to have an opening of the inventory, hopefully, as we, try to work our way out of the recession. And it's going to be pushing a lot of buyers into that market to very quickly take up those spaces. That doesn't equate to a housing market dropping drastically in prices. Now, kind of what I'm seeing from a sort of anecdotal point of view is, in the Bay Area, housing prices, the houses, let's say a 2-bedroom condo went from 500, 600 grand pre-COVID to, in San Jose, for example, to 900,000 during COVID and towards right as we were kind of coming out of it 5-6 months ago. And now the lack of housing buying demand has dropped the prices when you look at it on paper, but the people weren't buying and selling during this time that own that 2-bedroom condo. That the housing price on that house that is now for sale has dropped back down to 600 grand. So the person that owned the property pre-COVID and it was worth 500 grand is still selling the house for $600,000 now, 2 years later. They're just not selling it for this much. And the amount of people that were able to sell at the peak, it's the same thing as any market. As the stocks are going up or crypto's going up, Bitcoin, only 1 or 2% of the people are taking advantage of the housing prices going way, way up and saying, oh, you know what, I'm gonna sell before it goes down on the other side of the hill. And only a couple percent. And a lot of people are trying to, on the other end, get into that market. But same thing as stocks, when there's so many people that want to short a stock, for example, because you can pretty much buy at any point for any price. But when there's so many people that want to short a stock, there's only so many contracts to purchase, call or put options. And the same thing it kind of goes in this real estate situation is there's only 10 houses for sale in any given week around here because there was such a short amount of inventory. So yes, 10,000 people want to go buy those overpriced houses in the past couple months, but nobody could. Only 10 people could because that's just the amount of houses that were available. And that's what was happening across the market in the US. And half of that is for a fundamental reason and half of that is artificial. The half that's artificial was the lower interest rates, and the half that's fundamental is the fact that there's no inventory. We've had 1.5 million housing starts every year, in the 1980s, and now it's like a couple 100,000, if that. And we should be having at least 90,000 housing starts at the very bare minimum a year just to try and sort of keep up. We are way, way low. 5.4 million houses we need essentially in order to bring us to equilibrium. So going into this housing recession, we're going to be low on inventory. The second that the Federal Reserve sees that they've lowered, the inflation, they're going to want to use real estate to try and prop the economy and generate cash flow to push things out of the recession. And that's going to, on average, recessions take about 3.5 years, 4 years to get out of, which lines up with my kind of timeline and thinking on this. The Federal Reserve is raising the rates. They're going to give it a couple of months to see how things go. Going into winter, there's going to be less buyers, so everybody's going to freak out over the next couple of months thinking there's some, massive housing crash. And the second that then the Federal Reserve sees all of this going on and sees people freaking out, they're going to respond to it, probably start lowering those interest rates, which is going to have an indirect effect on the mortgage market. It's going to drive a bunch of buyers into the market next summer once they see the houses are on sale. I'm actually hoping that the home builders start building as many properties as they can, because the issue in and out of this recession for the next 5 to 10 years it's going to be the housing affordability. It's going to be those costs of the houses. I actually hope that the cost of the houses goes down, because the only way that will happen and what that will mean is that we've built a bunch of houses and we've provided houses to a lot of people at a more fair price. Right now, they're not really being sold at a fair price because there's not enough of them. So the market is determining that, its value is all the way up here. So the fears and the fear mongering and, having this massive sort of pessimistic feel about, the real estate market going into the recession, I'm not really on that side of the wall at all. I think the issues in 5 years from now, people are still going to be saying, how do I afford a house? Because right now, all of the new construction developers, they're not going to build any more houses because they're worried about a recession. They don't have a good supply chain. They don't have enough contractors to build the properties. There's a million issues on the inventory side, and there's not really anything they could do about it. It has to come from the policymakers. So yeah, that's kind of some of my thoughts on, the real estate market right now and where I'm at. My opinion can evolve over time, and I'm sure it will as I, learn more and everything. But if you're looking to, buy or sell in the next couple of months in the Bay Area, now's the right time for you. And you're not worried about losing your job or layoffs or anything like that. You want to lock in a house at a low price with a high interest rate, maybe get an adjustable rate mortgage so that as we come out of the recession and they lower the rates, now you'll have a low housing price and you'll get a low interest rate as you're able to, refinance or whatever down the line. Then you can reach out to me at 408-275-5601, and I'd love to help you. But if not, I'll see you guys next time.